Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take stuff listeners send in and really pull out the key ideas quickly. Think of it like a shortcut, helping you get informed without wading through everything.
Exactly. And today we're looking at a YouTube transcript. It's from Speak English Smartly. Now, first glance, it might just look like, okay, tips on improving English listening, pretty straightforward.
Uh-huh.
But actually, there are some really interesting, deeper nuggets in this conversation between Jessica and Mark.
Yeah, it's not just grammar drills, is it? It's a real chat. And while they're talking language learning, it touches on, well, how we learn things generally, how we face challenges. Lots there. So we're ready to get into it.
Let's do it. So Jessica starts off with this pretty powerful way of looking at listening to native speakers. She calls it a real-life classroom.
Mm-hmm.
What did you make of that idea?
Oh, I thought that was great. Yeah, because it immediately takes it beyond just like memorizing rules from a book. It's about being in the language, right? Hearing the rhythm, how people stress words, the natural way phrases just connect. It's all that stuff you don't really get from a textbook, the unspoken bits.
That's such a good point, that implicit learning. It's incredibly powerful. Our brains are just wired for patterns. So when you immerse yourself, you're sort of unconsciously training yourself to pick up on how the language actually works.
Right.
It's not just knowing words, it's feeling how they fit together in, real conversations.
Okay, so speaking of how words fit together, they zoom in on this one phrase, kept coming. Seems simple, but why focus on that?
Well, Mark uses it first. He's talking about visiting his grandmother's ranch after she'd passed away. He says something like, I was about 12 and I kept coming to the ranch.
Okay.
And Jessica points out that kept coming tells you it wasn't just a one-off visit. It signals something that happened repeatedly, over a stretch of time in the past, regularly.
And they give another example too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I kept visiting my grandmother every weekend. It really shows how the words around it give you the meaning. You might not know kept coming as a specific item, but you figure it out from the situation. Super practical for talking about things you used to do regularly.
Yeah, and what's neat is how it shows you a grammar concept like repeated past actions, that continuous feel, without actually teaching grammar rules formally. You just see it used naturally. Makes it stick better, I think.
Definitely. Okay, so then the conversation, it kind of pivots a bit. They bring up the word optimistic, and the context is talking about startup companies, which are, let's face it, often pretty risky.
Right. The line was something like, every startup company is unlikely to work, but that doesn't mean you can't be optimistic. So optimistic here means, keeping that hopeful view, expecting good things even when there are big challenges. You see the problems, but you focus on the potential upside.
And Jessica's personal story about her blog really brings that home, doesn't it?
Mhm.
She said she was nervous about competition, but she made a choice. Like, okay, I'm going to be optimistic about this.
Yeah, and then the Cousin's Cafe example, too.
Oh, yeah. Starting a cafe when there are big chains everywhere takes guts. And optimism.
It really does.
It makes you think, how much does my own outlook affect how I approach things?
Totally. And it's not about being blind to risks, is it? It's more like resilience. Believing you can find a way through, even when it's hard. That belief itself can push you forward.
Okay, next up, the word perceptible. This came up when they were discussing changes in India.
Yeah, the speaker mentioned not seeing huge, obvious changes, but noticing a kind of energy, a dynamism. So perceptible means something you can notice, something you can sense or see, but it's often subtle, not necessarily big and dramatic.
Like those tiny sprouts in a garden you mentioned. You wouldn't see the change day to day, maybe, but over weeks.
Yeah.
There it is, if you're exactly that. And Jessica's example about feeling a perceptible improvement in energy after exercising consistently. Or the neighbor learning guitar, you don't hear perfection overnight, but gradually, perceptibly, it gets better. We've all experienced that, right?
We have. And the key thing about perceptible is valuing those small steps. We often want massive leaps, but real change is usually built on those small, steady, perceptible gains.
Right.
Noticing them helps you stay motivated, keeps the momentum going. It's a different way of measuring progress, really. More about the journey.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and then the last main word they focus on was deliberately. This came up when talking about Amazon and how they choose not to sell certain things, like guns.
Exactly. Deliberately means doing something on purpose, intentionally, after thinking about it and making a conscious choice. It's about intention.
The example of the cousin deliberately using reusable bags, That's such a clear, everyday illustration.
It is.
And your own example about deliberately putting the phone away to study, that really resonates.
Uh-huh.
It shows how these small intentional actions add up, right? They build habits, help you reach your goals,
Absolutely. And they mentioned others too, like deliberately waking up earlier to read.
or stopping scrolling social media before bed for better sleep.
Yeah, all conscious choices. It's
Mhm.
about taking control, aligning your actions with what you actually want or value. It really compounds over time.
So if we kind of pull all these threads together, what have we really learned from this deep dive? We've seen how active listening helps you soak up natural language, understand words like kept coming from context.
Mhm.
We talked about mindset, how being optimistic helps you push through challenges.
Yes, perseverance.
Then recognizing those small, perceptible wins to keep you going.
Building momentum.
And finally, the power of making deliberate, intentional choices to change habits or achieve goals.
And, if we circle back to your aim becoming well-informed efficiently, what's striking is how these ideas connect.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's language learning or work or personal growth.
Yeah.
These principles apply pretty broadly, don't they?
Absolutely. Active engagement, positive outlook, noticing progress, being intentional, it's all linked.
Hmm,
So, yeah, what looked like just a language chat actually gave us some really useful insights for lots of areas.
it really did. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Just consider one area in your own life right now.
Yeah.
Where could applying one of these ideas, maybe more optimism or looking for those perceptible shifts or acting more deliberately, where could that make a real difference for you?
That's a great takeaway. Something to mull over. Maybe even check out that original video again with these ideas in mind. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.